What's up, everybody? This is Brad, and I wanted to talk about this because it happened last week while I was away on wedding duty. And even though I did kind of go on a bit of a rant about it on Twitter, I want to talk about it here. And that is the recent announcement from Vimm's Lair, which is a website that hosts downloads for old games from old consoles that are long out of print. The physical versions of these games pretty much don't exist anymore for most of them, and they're specifically the console versions for consoles that have, again, like, they're gone. They're just gone. Those systems do not exist anymore. In terms of they are not being released by their creators or developers, and that comes with. I'll try to work a little bit better on this in post, but let's take a look at this here. This notice from June 6th from Vimm's Lair. Vimm's Lair has been asked to remove many games from the vault on behalf of Nintendo, Sega, Lego, and the ESA. While most of these games and the hardware to play them haven't been sold in decades, ultimately it's their prerogative, so these games are now gone for good. Which, of course, implies that they will not be coming back. Now, this happened I believe the week before last as well, or maybe a couple of weeks before then. I don't know, everything kind of seems like a blur the last month, but a lot of takedowns, several hundred, I think, were issued. And the takedown only requested from the first wave of takedown requests were only for artwork, I think, not games. So Vimm's Lair complied, took the artwork down, and put the ROMs back up. Fast forward to what happened recently, and there were over 3,000 requests between these different groups to have games pulled from the site completely and permanently. Or I'm guessing they've taken it upon themselves from Vimm's Lair to not put the games back up ever again. But this got people, of course, looking into things because it seems very weird that all of these companies would just out of the blue do this. And it got people to thinking, like, what is it with this? Because what happened during the first wave of takedowns was certain games were taken down or requested to be taken down by parties that did not have the legal right to enforce ownership of them or an assertion to, like, a copyright violation. So it was very strange. Let me see if I can find the one that people were bringing up. It's like a Tamagotchi game, I think, or like Marionette or something like that. There's something to do with a Tamagotchi game that has Marionette in the title. That was also requested to be taken down by Nintendo. But I don't think there's something about that claim. People are like, this is a very strange claim because, like, Nintendo wasn't, like, the publisher of this or something like that. And it appeared that the only reason why this had gotten flagged is because Marionette uses the letters in sequence Mario, Mario, which is why it would get caught up in that. Something similar did happen as while I'm looking for this while I'm recording. A game with the title Supersonic Racer was flagged and requested to be taken down by Sega. The problem with this is that this is not a Sega game. It is not a Sonic the Hedgehog game. So somehow the system or whatever happened here, someone or some program interpreted the title of Supersonic Racer as a Sonic the Hedgehog game, therefore obviously published or developed by Sega, and therefore issued the request to be taken down on behalf of Sega. Which tells me one very clear thing. This takedown and most of these takedowns were done with AI or some kind of bot or program used to scan the internet or various websites for potential violations. This is even further backed up, and you can see this is why I use these specific characters in the thumbnail for this. This is even further backed up by the fact that Nintendo pretty much laid waste to Vimm's Lair on behalf of, like, for Mario games, Super Smash Brothers. Although, strangely enough, it was the ESA who requested. If you go and look through some of the requests, they are very strange. If you go to the GameCube portion of the vault and click Super Smash Bros. Melee, it says the request was issued by the Entertainment Software Association and not Nintendo. Now, Nintendo does work with them, so that may not matter, but it's very strange that some of the claims are specifically said to be from Nintendo, while others are claimed to be specifically from the ESA. That's just strange to me, but which tells me, once again, this is automated. But if you want to look at another weird thing, I didn't put this one in there, but maybe I should have put him instead of Wario. But if you click Luigi's Mansion, it's still up. There was no request from Nintendo to remove Luigi's Mansion. Same as if you go, and you can stay right here in the GameCube. If you go to, where is it? Give me a second here. I'm looking. Mixing my letters up. Shadow the Hedgehog. It's still up. You can still get Shadow the Hedgehog from Vimm's Lair because they did not ask them to take it down. And it says publisher Sega right there under the title. So, clearly, whatever was used to flag this, to go through the site, used some sort of automated program or something like that, or site reader, however these programs tend to work, to scan for specific titles, specific words, Sonic the Hedgehog, most likely just Sonic, and then automatically requested the game be taken down from Sega, which would be why the Super Sonic Racer game, which has nothing to do with Sonic the Hedgehog, nothing to do with Sega, had a request from Sega to be removed. And this brings up the thing here that bothers me the most about this stuff. If these companies are now going to just simply rely on automated things to read the sites for game ROMs, or what they think is some kind of copyright violation, or AI to issue these automatic takedowns, because the way this works, and I want to be sure about this, but I am pretty sure the main website for the ESA actually says that they use AI to hang on, let me look for it. I believe it says they use AI to search for these sorts of violations. Trying to find it. Can't seem to find. Someone had posted about it, but I don't know. I'm having trouble finding it here. Here, you'll have to forgive me for kind of not really knowing where I'm looking for. I can't find it. Anyway, I'll try to look through their site as I'm talking. But the thing is, there's if AI and these automatic programs are going to be reading into this stuff, it's gonna make it harder for emulation to stick around. It's because they can just turn the program loose and they don't have to verify anything. And a lot of these emulation sites, like, they're not really wealthy or anything like that. They're just hosting some ROMs. And look, the thing here is, like, while Vimm is correct that they do have the legal right to ask that these ROMs be taken down. But as often is pointed out in situations, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. Technically, fan art falls within a legal gray area. If you sell fan art for a living, you're technically infringing on the rights of a company. So if you're drawing Mario fan art and selling it at an anime convention or whatever, Nintendo technically has the right to tell you, no, you can't do that. That's our character. We created it. You're not allowed to do that. But again, the problem is in that case, it's an argument about like money. Like, how much money are you really making from fan art? I don't think that too many like fan artists really live off of their fan art. Some of them might, but even so, it gets into a bit more, again, that legal gray area, because if somebody created the artwork from scratch, if they didn't steal assets, then it should be legally, especially if you're drawing a character in your own art style, then it could fall under fair use because you've transformed the character to fit your own art style, so that while the character is clearly not yours, you can still sell the artwork and sell it as your own. Especially if you're not claiming it's officially like Nintendo stuff, which seems to be the line not to cross. Don't present your work as if it's official, and then you're good. It's sort of similar case to like parody law. But anyway, the thing is it was a question. People were questioning whether or not this was a legitimate claim from all of these at one time, or if it was just a troll. And I don't think it really matters. I mean, it does to some point, but like, I'll go back against that. If it's legit, then yes, it's way worse for it to be a troll. Granted, I don't really get the people who would want to go that far to troll, and I'm not saying that there wouldn't be. There obviously are, but I think this is bad. I think it's bad for these gaming companies to go after. And the thing with Vimm's Lair is that this is a site that's been around forever. It's been around forever. There's no way Nintendo didn't know about this. It's one of the things, like, I saw so many people saying, like, you gotta learn to keep your mouth shut. Don't talk about emulation. And to a point, I would agree. It's just generally, don't say where you get your ROMs from. If you download ROMs off the internet, don't just go out and say, here's where I get them. But even if people do that, I don't think that that's what led to this. I think that this is a combination of, again, companies looking to control their works, and they don't care. I mean, like, Nintendo is not. I need to say this every time we talk about emulation in Nintendo. Nintendo is Japan's most profitable company. The Switch was a massive success for Nintendo. So much so, and so are their games, by the way. When they shut down the Yuzu emulator for the Switch not that long ago, They cited like 1 million downloads of Tears of the Kingdom as like, oh, this hurt us so bad. Tears of the Kingdom broke sales records. And it caused a bump, an increase in the sale of Switches. Many years into this console's lifespan, the Switch never really stopped selling. It slowed down as more and more people bought one, which is natural. But the fact that was it 8 years when Tears of the Kingdom came out? Or will that be... No, that was last year, maybe 7. Somewhere between 7 and 8 years into the Switch, which is an extended life for a console, let's be honest. The Switch is going to be like 9 years old whenever the sequel finally rolls out. But, the Switch was like, it's dominated. It's a tremendous success for them. So, even if you look at the fact that there were 1 million downloads of Tears of the Kingdom, the fact that it broke sales records is showing that this is not hurting Nintendo's business. You can only assume that, by the way, if you assume that the people who are downloading this game didn't also buy it. Because there's going to be a portion of that group of people who downloaded the ROM for the Yuzu stuff, didn't buy it. And by the way, I'm going to afford you this, even if you assume that none of those people, none of those millions that did. The fact, again, that the game sold very, very well. And sold well enough that it got people to start buying Switches again. Which is just further proof that Nintendo is not hurting because of emulation. I think I talked about this the last time I talked about emulation on here, but many years back, I was at an anime convention where an English dub actor specifically said that that piracy is killing the anime industry, and if you don't stop, then the anime industry might die. Let's fast forward 20 years later. A former piracy site went legit and is now a monopoly. It owns over maybe even over 90% of all anime that's licensed in the US or in the US market, or however they described it. Crunchyroll has almost everything. And the industry is more profitable now than it ever was. And seems to be growing by the day, despite the issues with the animation studios in Japan and all the studios that do work to make those anime working their animators to basically early retirement because of the demand. There's so much demand for anime now that there aren't enough animators to finish it all. And for a long time now, for the last several years, there's been an increased concern that at some point the anime industry is going to implode, not because of piracy, but because of the animators being overworked. There's too much anime being made now because everybody's trying to get as much profit off of it as they can because it's just spitting out money. The problem is that a lot of these companies, and Nintendo included, I love Mario games, Zelda games, Pokemon games. Look, I love the stuff Nintendo puts out. But at the end of the day, they are a company. They do not care how much you like a particular game. If a Mario game flopped bad enough, they would erase it from the face of the earth. They do not care. Look at what happened with the Wile E. Coyote movie. That Warner Brothers Discovery just threw in the trash. Why? Because they could get like millions of dollars back if they just write it off as a failure before it's even hit theaters. It's complete. It's ready to go. There were services bidding to get it. But David Zaslav just said, no, we don't need. There's no people don't want to watch a full-length feature film about the Looney Tunes anymore. The same studio that went crazy to get out Space Jam 2. There was no real demand for a second Space Jam, but they made one. And it got people talking. And actually, not that long ago, a Foghorn Leghorn meme was taking over the internet. To the point that somebody made a Foghorn meme of Foghorn Leghorn roasting Vegeta from Dragon Ball Z after Vegeta had, from the scene where Vegeta got knocked out by Perfect Cell because he let him assume his perfect form. The meme caught on so much that Eric Balza, the official voice of Bugs Bunny, and I don't know if he may be. I want to be sure. Because it used to be like Mel Blanc was a lot of these characters. Yeah, Eric Balza is the current voice for Foghorn Leghorn. See? He got into the meme and recorded that meme of Foghorn roasting Vegeta. That's how popular it was. And by the way, he has spoken out against the shelving of the movie too. That's something that people need to understand. These companies don't care about the games they make beyond how it'll affect their bottom line. They don't care about the historical value of any of these games. They don't care they don't care how many times you buy a game. They think you should keep buying that game. Super Mario Bros. 3 is one of the most influential video games of all time. Legally, legitimately, I can play this game on my NES Mini that I own, my 3DS that I bought it on, the Super Mario All-Stars cartridge for the original Super Nintendo that I have somewhere. If that Super Nintendo still works, by the way, the last time I had that thing out, last time I checked, my Super Nintendo actually did work. What else? My Wii U. I originally bought Super Mario Bros. 3 on the Wii and then transferred it to the Wii U when the Wii went out of... when the Wii's functions all stopped. So that's what? NES Mini? 3DS? My Wii U? My Switch? And my Super Nintendo, and I did own the original NES with the Super Mario Bros. 3 cartridge on it. So, in my life, I've had this game, or some variation of it, on 6 different consoles. 7, maybe, if you count moving it from the Wii to the Wii U. I think I deserve to be able to download this game if I want to play it on a computer just to put it on YouTube. I'm already paying for access to Nintendo Switch Online, so what difference does it make if I download the ROM off the internet and play it on my computer instead if I wanted to do that? Or hook my NES Mini up. I posted this on Twitter too, and I talked about one of the main reasons why emulation exists and why it's so silly. that Nintendo is so against it. Because I'm going back to NSO for this. Super Smash Bros. Is one of Nintendo's biggest franchises. And funny enough, of course, we all know the story that at first Nintendo rejected the concept of putting Nintendo characters into a platform fighting game and having them fight each other because they said it didn't make any sense. And then, of course, Sakurai and his team did it anyway, showed it to Miyamoto, and he actually thought it looked like it could be fun to play. And then they gave them the okay to do it. So just so you know, Nintendo almost passed on one of their biggest franchises. Like, Smash Brothers reveals became legendary. Smash Brothers reveals were so big and got so much media attention that when there wasn't gonna be one, they announced that ahead of time so that people wouldn't get their hopes up. Think about that. But Super Smash Bros., the original one, the Nintendo 64 Smash Bros., is not in the Nintendo 64 catalog on Nintendo Switch Online. Why? Because they don't want people to play that instead of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. That's why. They won't put that up. They will not give you the chance to play any of the older Super Smash Bros. Games officially and legally today because they don't want it interfering with the sales or the play time for Smash Ultimate. This is why some of your favorite streaming services will pull shows that don't do very well despite claiming, look, we've got all this old stuff. Disney's pulled old classic shows that haven't been available in any legal form in forever. They threw them up there for a few weeks or months, then pulled them because nobody watched them. And in some cases, even recently, Disney had a whole movie. I can't remember what the movie was where they didn't advertise it at all. You can criticize like some of the more recent Disney films where they just didn't advertise it very well, but you still saw ads for it. What was that movie, Strange World? I think it was, where they said, they're not advertising this very well. Okay. Well, there was some other film, it was a live action film, I think it was space themed or something. Disney put it up on the service and then pulled it not long after so they could write it off. Very similar to the Wile E. Coyote Warner Brothers Discovery thing. They don't care. These companies do not care about what you enjoy. They don't care about how much these games mean to people. They just want money. And that's why I don't feel bad when people download these games, because at the end of the day, they're gonna still make lots of money. When COVID hit and every single industry suffered because people were panicked. A lot of people were staying at home. They didn't want to go anywhere. They didn't want to go to the movies or do whatever. Gaming exploded. The sale of video games skyrocketed. People got into gaming very much. The Switch Animal Crossing game got way bigger than Nintendo ever expected because at the time where people were scared out of their minds, what is this disease, this virus that's going everywhere, and people are dropping dead left and right, and nobody can find any sort of like common symptoms or characteristics between people. It seems to just kill people randomly. And some people get it and they're perfectly fine and never even develop so much as a sneeze. Other people get it and they just drop dead. So people were looking for something like fun and calm and relaxing to play, and it just so happened to come along at the same time that Animal Crossing did. And people got really into Animal Crossing. Gaming was the one industry, the video game industry was the one industry that did not suffer during COVID and actually had growth. The gaming companies are making money. They're not struggling. The only thing they're struggling with right now is trying to figure out how, oh crap, we only made $2 billion this year instead of 2.2 million or $1 billion like we thought we would. We got to start firing people. There are projects, there are big game projects being canceled too that they've invested time in. Now that COVID is kind of like COVID's not gone, but the world has pretty much at this point gone back to the way it was before COVID hit. You'll still see some people masking every now and then, but for the most part, it's not common anymore. It's gone back to being, it's not unseen. Back in the before COVID, nobody masked, at least here in the U.S. Specifically in my neck of the woods, you never saw a mask when somebody was sick. Nowadays, you'll still, if you go out in public, you may see one or two people with a mask. So it's not gone, but people have moved on. They don't think about it anymore. And so people aren't playing games as much anymore. That doesn't mean that the industry's suffering. It's not suffering. Again, these companies are making billions of dollars. The people downloading some old out of print Smash Brothers game that Nintendo refuses to re-release because they don't want it affecting the sales of Smash Ultimate, which is weird to me. If you're going to go with that logic, like, then why release more than one game at all? Like, don't you think that people who liked Melee and might like that's just this idea that if they re-released Melee, people would just stop playing Ultimate? I'm like, no, these are different games with different appeals. Like, no matter how good Melee may be, it doesn't have this ridiculously gigantic roster of just like, you can't use Sephiroth in Melee. Mod it, you can, but that's not the same. A modded Melee with a fake Sephiroth in there is not the same thing as legitimately playing as Sephiroth in Smash Ultimate. It's just not. It may be a fun little novelty, but it's not going to carry the same weight or the same experience. But what do I know? I'm talking from somebody who likes to play these games. I like these characters. I like these stories, even the ones I don't like, other people do. I mean, I don't personally care much for the fact when they added Byleth to Smash. Well, guess what? That was somebody's favorite character, and it meant a lot to them. But what people need to understand in this whole war on emulation, and I'm going to keep going back to it, it's not about, it's just all about money. That's all it is. Nintendo thinks that if somebody goes and downloads a bunch of ROMs for old games that they used to play, that's taking money away from them. The problem is that Nintendo also is not selling you these games. The easiest way to combat theft, actual piracy, to combat people who are just refusing to buy your games, is to make them available on the internet to play on PC. If Nintendo released a PC shop of their own on their website and say, okay, here's our official PC service to go alongside with Steam, or I know they would never do it, but if they decided to partner up with Steam and release games on that platform, you would see a tremendous decrease in people downloading ROMs. Why not offer people a chance to buy some of these retro games? Now, in my opinion, I think some of the oldest games should just be free to play. I think that at this point, Super Mario Bros. Like, and this is why I can't wait till we, at some point, which I'll probably, I may not make it to the point that video games become where I want to get into the discussion uh, of how will video games be applied to public domain. Like, will it be just like, because the thing about a video game is they're interactive media, which is already why like gaming companies, including Nintendo kind of didn't want to, but they had to acknowledge that playing a video game is not like listening to a song or watching a movie or reading a book, because you can't change how a story goes because the words are pre-written. You can't change the way a song sounds because the song is presented that way. I mean, you can play that song yourself, but it's not going to be like that. Movies don't change. The song doesn't change. You know, you can do different adaptations of a movie, but that specific version doesn't change. With video games, though, you have to interact with the media. If you just start up a video game, it's going to sit on the start screen and nothing's going to happen. You may see it run little demo movies and all, but you're not playing the game. Consuming the video game is playing the video game. And so it doesn't work like stuff. Like, it doesn't work like a movie. It maybe not the perfect comparison, but it's like food. If you make food, you know, how do you consume food? You eat it. You know, you can smell the food, I guess, but the food's going to go bad at some point. Like, again, it's not a perfect comparison, but there's a specific way to enjoy a specific medium. Or the way it's intended to be consumed. But I don't know, man. I could talk about this all day, and I really do think like the conversations when public domain comes along, because we know Nintendo's going to expect you to pay no matter what, no matter how old a game gets. They're never going to give you Super Mario Bros. For free until public domain can start applying to video games. And as we saw, I can't remember what the original interpretation of public domain was. It was like 15 or 25 years after the creator's death could something become public domain. Disney managed to get it extended to like full 95 years, I think it was, before Steamboat Willie went public domain. And you saw it, like, Disney was like directly responsible for why it took so long for Steamboat Willie to go public domain. And some of the other characters too. And we saw what Disney did. Like, Disney tried to trademark Hakuna Matata or copyright it, whatever. But Hakuna Matata is like a common expression. It's not like an invented catchphrase. So they couldn't do it. Disney tried to assert at one point. I remember people were talking about it, that they tried to assert ownership of the Greek pantheon. I think whichever one it was. It's got like Thor and Loki. That may not be Greek. That's Norse. Never mind. Don't listen to me. But there were artists making stuff for like Loki and Thor, but not the Disney Marvel versions of those characters. And Disney still tried to assert that they own that concept. They own the concept of Thor. They own the concept of Loki. But they don't, so they lost. Emulation is legal. Problem is when they shut Yuzu down, the Yuzu devs had to agree to publicly state that emulation causes piracy. And piracy hurts the companies. There's no figurative data to prove that, of course. There's no numbers. Nintendo can't prove with their with the profits that emulation has caused them to take a hit, because it didn't. I mean, Nintendo kind of is like the king of the gaming world right now. I mean, all these other companies are arguing. What was it? The head of PlayStation said something recently about how gamers need to get used to the concept of not owning their games. That you literally will just have to play games on a subscription service and play whatever it is that they put up. That the concept of buying a game is going to become obsolete. They don't want to sell you a product anymore. They're selling you the honor. They want you to buy the honor of playing these big AAA games that seem to always be broken the first day they come out, and they all need a day one patch to fix the stuff that they couldn't fix in the time that they put on the devs to get it out by. Delaying the game is almost like, even delayed games seem to still be broken when they release. But I don't know. I've talked about this for over 40 minutes now. And I just had to talk about this because if this was Nintendo, or I guess we go back to the ESA one more time, because I forgot to bring this up. I get off on a tangent and I forget all the things I wanted to say. But the other thing about these Vimm's Lair takedowns is that, strangely enough, the ones from Nintendo did not request. I figure if this was, part of me believes that this is just a troll, but faking it, because Nintendo asked the Yuzu devs to shut down completely, and other emulator sites that Nintendo came across, they shut down completely, like on their own accord, because they were terrified of Nintendo issuing them a cease and desist on that. But the fact that not all of the Nintendo, like, they did not ask Vimm's Lair to remove every Nintendo game, just the big property ones, just the ones that people know right off the bat: Donkey Kong, Zelda, Mario, probably Pokemon's up in there too. But not like Luigi's Mansion. Not the Wario games. I think all of the Wario Land games are still available on Vimm's Lair. We'll go back to the GameCube. Let me look at that real fast again. Because there was a Wario game. Yeah, Wario World, still available. So, be it a troll or be it legitimately from the ESA, they half did it. They put in the slightest bit of effort just to catch whatever they could. And I don't think this is like, it's supposed to be like asset protection. This doesn't protect assets. This just makes people not like your service, your company. But I don't know, man. It's just, I'm going to keep downloading ROMs for games that I already had bought at some point and would gladly buy again. Problem is, we also live in a time period where the price of goods is so high that people are giving up fast food. Used to be that fast food was a cheap alternative to like a, properly cooked meal. It was convenient and it was cheap. Fast food is so expensive now that people have stopped going there, and now the fast food chains actually are suffering a bit. But what's funny is some of these like retail stores, some of these like supermarkets, these big Walgreens, Target, Walmart, these types of stores have actually announced that they're going to start dropping the prices of goods because people have stopped coming to their stores. Which tells you something there. If a store is just going to drop the price of their stuff by a significant margin, then guess what? It probably wasn't what they were asking for before they decided to drop the prices. But yeah, everything, every service, every good you could buy is more expensive now than it ever was. That was another thing that came up, I think, from PlayStation, the head of PlayStation recently. Maybe it was Microsoft. I can't remember. God. So a lot's happened for me in the last week, if you can't tell. One of the big wigs in gaming suggested that it's time to up the price of video games to $80 for the base game, with the argument that it would help provide more funds for video games to be made because game production is getting more and more expensive, which is a choice, not a necessity. You don't have to spend $200 million on a video game. You just wanted to. Which comes with its own issue, because if I remember correctly, there were reports that, was it Forspoken? It may have been Forspoken where the company had said it had invested all these millions of dollars in the development of the game, and turns out they didn't. The game was not worth or did not cost as much to make as the publisher said it did, which is why now you can pretty easily pick up Forspoken for like $20. But yeah, it wasn't that long ago that they're like, oh, $70 is going to be the new norm for base games now. Okay, well, a year later, well, we need to go to 80. It'll help bring in more profits to make these games more affordable to make, and we can keep making these big millions of dollars games instead of just trying to make better games cheaper. People say it won't work. Well, we haven't tried it yet. That's some great logic. There was already massive pushback against games going to $70, especially considering we still live in an era where almost every game these days has got a battle pass or DLC that you have to pay for. But no, the base game, the broken base game that they release, that they always have to release updates for, you gotta go to $80 now. It's about money. It's just about money. Because these guys have more money. Some of these guys are among the richest people in the U.S., some of these big publishers. They ain't poor. Some of these guys are among the richest people, maybe even in the world. But they absolutely do not want you to download a game off the internet that you probably have paid for a few times already on whatever console you want to play it on. They don't want you to do that. But they also don't want you to sell. They don't want to sell you those games either. There'd probably be a lot of people willing to pay for a new HD release of Smash Bros. Melee for the Switch. Or to buy NSO to play the original N64 Super Smash Bros. Online against other people. Online play for the original Super Smash Bros. On Nintendo Switch Online would probably sell people that expansion pack for NSO. But they don't want to do it because they've got Smash Ultimate. But anyway, I've talked long enough about this, and I'm sorry for ranting, but I really wanted to talk about this. And it's just sad that this stuff keeps happening because there's an answer. The answer is people want to play these games on PC. People want to be able to buy these games and own them. People want to be able to play old games that are stuck in a legal limbo, that maybe the company that owned the rights to it no longer exists, or the hardware that was required to play this specific game isn't available on modern consoles. Like, I can understand maybe why Nintendo wouldn't bother with trying to put Hey You Pikachu on the Nintendo Switch Online, because of the microphone function. Maybe there's no way to get that to properly work on the Switch, even though I'm sure they could if they figured out, if they put their minds to it. I'm sure somebody could figure that out. But maybe that's why people want to emulate it instead. Maybe they can find a way to get to work around that. I tried that before. I didn't get it to work, but I'm sure somebody out there has figured out how to properly emulate Hey You Pikachu on a computer. But anyway, one last thing. Like I said, I don't know. I probably already said this earlier, but talking about emulation is not the reason why these emulation sites get targeted. It's because they think that they can squeeze every little drop of penny, every little penny they think they can get out of these games, they're going to get. Nintendo is going to be as tight-fisted with selling Mario games as Disney was to make sure nobody got their hands on any sort of version of Mickey Mouse, until they just couldn't find a legal excuse as to why they still needed to retain full rights to anything related to Mickey Mouse. Disney wanted everything. They tried forever to keep Steamboat Willie from going into public domain, and they succeeded for a lot of years until they finally couldn't. At some point, Super Mario Bros. Will be public domain. When will that be? When will Nintendo finally realize that, hey, you can't just keep selling the same old stuff, or expect people who've bought one game 10 times to just keep buying it indefinitely forever? It's going to be a long time. We're going to have to wait a long time before we see what happens with video games and public domain. But anyway, appreciate you guys for sticking around if you're still here. This video went for a long time, but I really wanted to get all this stuff out because I didn't get a chance to talk about it when it happened. And I got a lot of thoughts on this, and as you can tell. But I support emulation. I support people being able to play games that they've bought, and maybe even to try games that they're thinking about buying, or the hardware is no longer in production and the games are no longer in production. Games stuck on old consoles, games lost in the legal rights, the system for who owns a particular game. Some of those companies, publishers, no longer exist. The rights to those games are just gone, up in the air. Who knows who owns them? Who even wants some of these games anymore? So, that's all I got to say. I say all. It's almost been an hour now. But thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if you would. Maybe become a member of the channel. And hopefully I didn't bore you to death with my rantings. But I just wanted to talk about it. So, thanks. I'm out.